Boy, we look good just waking up. Good morning, church.
Good morning, church. Here we are in our backyard, and we have a tent set up. No, we did not actually camp last night, so don't give us credit for that. Oh, we did camp last night, really.
Just woke up.
Yep, and we're dressed and ready to go. But we actually set up the tent, so there's a place for kids to kind of gather and have like their own little space to just kind of like chill.
But mostly Mia, like not just random kids.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, that's something we should point out.
It's right there.
So I can't believe we've gone this long without saying Happy Father's Day.
Hey, thank you. You know, I have this gift of foresight this morning that there's going to be some cleaning and some chores happening all across this great land of ours in honor of our dads everywhere. It's going to be great. Just think of what's going to get tidied up today. Man,
that's some wishful thinking there, Jeff.
It's going to be fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So one thing we wanted to highlight today is what we have offering this summer.
So as you know, we are big camp people. We love Crossways. That's where we came from, Pine Lake Camp.
Yep, we even met there.
We did meet there. We got married there. True story. We love Calumet. We do a lot with Camp Calumet.
Yes.
They're our camp here in New England. Fantastic. I hope we get to reach the beach this fall, but I don't know. I'm not feeling too optimistic about it. But we'll do something, I'm sure. Canute's very creative. But today we got out of retirement some Luther Crest gear. As you know, we are friends with Luther Crest out in Minnesota. They are about roughly a mere 1,200 miles from here. But guess what? You're going to love this. So we have the opportunity to go to camp this summer from home at Luther Crest.
Yes, because of their awesome staff.
And their bold transformational faith program. I dare you, just say it 5 times fast. Bold Transformational Faith Program, Bold Transformational Faith Program, Bold Transformational Faith Program, Bold Transformational Faith Program, Bold Transformational Faith Program. Boom.
Show off.
Roasted.
So they put together, during the month of July, you can go and join a cabin group. Like you actually get a cabin group, you meet the same day throughout the week, like Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock. And your cabin group, it could be people from all over the country, would meet in with a counselor. Then during the morning as well, there's a live worship that actually anybody can join, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, we've been doing live worship on Sunday nights because they have a campfire every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we've been tuning into that, and it's been great to sing some camp songs and be around a fire, and yeah.
Yep. So we have
Here's
that
some
during
good
the day.
word.
That's like maybe kindergarten age through high school. In the evenings, it's actually really cool. They have Bible studies for one night is adults, one night is families, one night is families of young folks, and then also during the day, I should mention, you also have your arts and crafts and. Okay, no
other campenings is what they're calling it.
Yeah, and camp games and things like that. You can do them live.
So you might not be able to go to camp this summer, which of course I would love to go to camp too. I love being in camp. It's like the best thing to do. Nothing beats camp. Yeah. But since we can't do that, this is a great opportunity, and Luther Crest has shared it with us. We are sharing it with you. We'll have information coming out about how you can sign up and be a part of it.
That's right. So we should highlight this shirt I got when Joe went to Luther Crest Day Camp, like Vacation Bible Camp, which will be in August, that we'll be utilizing the Bold Transformational Camping Formation
Faith Program, Bold Transformational Faith Program, Bold Transformational Faith Program,
Bold
Transformational Faith Program.
So this Mia may have worn, so this has seen some time, but this was from 2009. This is my Luther Crest sweatshirt.
This t-shirt's probably about the same age vintage.
That's right.
I also have another shirt underneath it, which is probably from the next year. I used to have a fishing hat with like the mesh, and it had a big fish on it and the Luther Crest symbol on the front, which I love, but I think it probably got wrecked. It used to be the lawn mowing hat.
Yes, which is happening in like.
Not that I got hit by a lawnmower. Don't fret about that. But I think it just wore out.
That's right.
But here's another one. See, I got that. But it's hot under there, and we also have coffee mugs.
That's right. Cheers. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you. So today's going to be a great Sunday together of worship. We've got some, again, great songs, so thanks for those. And we've got
thanks to Amy and Dave
for their great song. We've got Bishop Hazelwood is with us again.
What?
So, I mean, hey, you know, we're all together. We're being church together in so many cool ways.
Yeah.
As the Synod together, across the ELCA, camping world. I mean, it's all coming together. So thanks for being part of it this morning. And
that's right.
It's great.
All right.
So why don't we pray and we'll get started.
Awesome.
All right. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks also for our fathers, for fathers who have taken us in and treated us like their own children, for other figures in our life who have been good mentors to us. We thank you for them and for their witness and for the wisdom they've passed on to us. And we also give thanks for our community and for all of us as we together strive together in faith. Be with us wherever we are and remind us that you are near no matter what. Amen.
Amen. Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Do we have to go back in the tent?
Ha!
This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world, I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and seas, his hands the wonders wrought. This is my Father's world, the birds their carols raise, the morning light, the lily white, declare their Maker's praise. This is my Father's world, he shines in all that's fair. In the rustling grass I hear him pass, he speaks to me everywhere. This is my Father's world, oh let me not forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world, why should my heart be sad? The Lord is King, let heaven ring, God reigns, let earth be glad.
So as you probably have remembered, here's my friend Dave again. He sang with
Hello,
us a couple
St.
weeks
Paul.
ago. Yeah, good to be with you. What do you got going on behind you there?
Well, I am on the shores of what we call beautiful Lake Carlos. This is the lake that Luther Crest is on here in Alexandria, Minnesota. Boy, just a few days ago, we've had consistently above 20-mile-an-hour winds, and so
Ooh.
the lake has just been roaring. And of course, the winds have been blowing around here. And so today we just had a front come through, which I think is on the way towards you guys also.
Probably, I think so.
But man, we've got just a nice calm lake today. And so sitting by the lake talking to you, lifting up the work that our outdoor ministries are doing here this upcoming summer.
Excellent. So I'm here at Town Beach here in Saybrook. There is two other families here at the beach. You can see one kid playing in the water back there, enjoying themselves. So hey, they're having a great day.
Yes.
So Dave, Tammy introduced this morning, and I've been talking a little bit about it. We are going to engage with Luther Crest this summer in your Bold Transformational Faith program. And could you just, I figured, hey, why not hear it from the horse's mouth?
Yeah.
Could you just tell us a little bit about it? I mean, not just the content, but how you got there and how Luther Crest is trying to be a partner in this time.
Yeah. Well, we acknowledge that our outdoor ministries, so you relating to Camp Calumet,
Yep.
and many others who might be watching this, have access and a relationship with a number of outdoor ministries. Well, we all are taking our call and our mission seriously in what we're going to be about this upcoming summer. The COVID pandemic has caused us to think differently and is causing us to do life different as an outdoor ministry site. So here at Luther Crest, we back in April made a decision to rethink faith formation in this pandemic age, where we knew that there might not be an opportunity for people to gather at our locations. And so we set out on a new initiative called the Bold Transformational Faith Program, of which our hope of teaching and learning together with our young people and our college-age staff could still happen, even though we wouldn't be able to gather here at Luther Crest. And so that program combines pieces of our on-site or day camp ministries that we would have. So one being faith formation, second, community building, and third, getting out into the out of doors. That program encompasses all those three major goals that we have. So each person that would participate in our program, or a congregation that would participate in that program, would be participating in a morning worship. They would be participating in a morning community building, where our college-age staff would gather them on Zoom in a small group, a cabin group, so to speak, go over the theme of the day, and then they would be asked to go out and do an activity outside, and then have some lunch, and then they'd come back in the afternoon for another small group conversation, and then be sent out. And we're going to do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, throughout July. So let's say you and your family signed up for the Mondays. Every Monday you would participate.
I see.
in a bold transformational faith day.
So you're a part of it for the whole month.
You're part of it it's a weekly experience.
That's great.
Yep. And then our hope is that at the end you'll have a different understanding of who God is, maybe confirm your understanding of who God is and who Jesus is and how the Holy Spirit works within you. But you'll end up having a renewed sense of faith and life, and moving beyond your own essence, and looking at
one of the things I love about camp always is there's a certain kind of way you can do community that just doesn't happen in other venues. Not that people aren't trying to connect with people, but there's something special about the way it happens at camp. I've always been a huge advocate of it. So I'm really pleased that you're trying something new to be able to try to foster that. I mean, obviously it's not the same. I mean, we're not going to be sitting at Lake Carlos with you, or in the beautiful chapel, or out on the lovely landscapes around Luther Crest, but or Calumet, or anywhere else, quite frankly. But you know, we can still be together. We can still figure out how it is we are called to be, you know, agents of grace in this world. And I think it's wonderful. So thank you for sharing it with us. So this is also a little bit of an experiment, in that we are trying to do this from 1,200 miles away. So like here with Camp Calumet, it's our synod. So we have those churches that are a part of Calumet Nation, whereas Luther Crest has a little bit of a different geography. But you know, it's the same thing where congregations plug into it, and now you've opened that up to more, and we can all still be church together. So I celebrate it. I'm hoping that people want to sign up. So how do we do that? And then maybe you could tell us a little bit about the theme.
Sure. Yep. So go to luthercrest.org, and right at the top, the first banner is a clickable graphic that takes you to the Bold Transformational Faith Program page. And that's where it's a simple Google Doc, and you can click on. It says register for Bold Transformational Faith. Click on that, fill out that Google form, and then we'll get you involved. If you want to do it as a church or a body of Christ or family group, make sure you write down who you want to be paired with, because we'll pair everybody together so that they're in the same small group. Yep. But there might be others from around the country that are part of that group too. So it'd be establishing a cabin group similar to what we do when people gather here at camp. And so that's the one way. Any church body that needs some extra graphics or some language, there's also a church portal website, and that's where you can find some of our explanations. If you go to our Luther Crest YouTube page, there's actually a Zoom conversation that we had with a number of pastors
Right.
and youth leaders, and you could visit that and hear from Jenna and Katie and Maddie about that program. And hear kind of the essence of what that means. And it's also great for parents to see. And we do want to lift up, there's that conversation about online fatigue, especially coming out of school and distance learning and things like that. And we want to acknowledge that is out there. We also want to say that with this content, it's very important, I think, in today's world and today's age to see and experience these sort of things. And so to carve out that, what would end up being 120 minutes throughout a day where you're in an online conversation exploring who Jesus is and having a staffer guide you along, there's opportunities for families to do this at night, or adults to even do it at night. So we're trying to accommodate people's schedules. And just to know that, similar to your worship service, once those things are posted, they're there forever. So this content, along with other inspirational pieces from our other Lutheran camps that are out there, there's going to be content out there that's meaningful and experiential and faith building, and lives into that theme of go make disciples, which is our overarching theme for this upcoming summer, knowing that from the earliest of generations, we were sinful people, but loved and guided by God's love. And now living in this new sense of who Jesus is and how Jesus transformed everything, is out how our mindset needs to change. Thus getting out into the world and doing life differently, loving and being those agents of grace that we hear about. As God's love comes to us and sends us out in grace.
Al, well, Dave, I think it's great. I can't wait to get people hooked up and start. I think it's going to be a fun summer. I mean, obviously we're in a different time. It's a different summer already, but this will be something positive that will be, I hope, transformational for all of us. So thank you, Dave, for what you do, and thanks for being my friend, and thanks for reaching out to St. Paul to be a part of it.
Yes, my pleasure.
We're very blessed. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll get all those links up, and so people can easily find the information that's necessary. And God's peace on this beautiful Sunday.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
You betcha. Take care, sir. Bye, everyone.
The Holy Gospel for this Sunday, June 21st, 2020, comes from the Gospel of Matthew, the 10th chapter. And Jesus said, "A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, and even the hairs on your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I also will deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against his mother. and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. The Gospel of our Lord. Grace and peace to you. I'd like you to think for a moment of something that is a fear that you have. It doesn't have to be anything big, it can be something small. I'm thinking something commonplace. So, for instance, to stimulate your thinking, I'll start by talking about my own fear. I have a fear. It's a strange fear for somebody who is 6'7" tall. I have a fear of heights. I don't know if you have this experience, but if I'm at the edge of a very tall building or the edge of a canyon or the edge of anything, it doesn't even need to be a very tall building. I can be up about 10 feet on a ladder. If I look down, I can feel it. My entire body resonates with fright, a fear of heights. For me, this is literally, I am immobilized. I freeze. So I proceed with all kinds of caution when I am around edges, ledges, tall spaces, even ladders. From some reading on fear by all kinds of anthropologists and psychologists, what we learn is that it's a series of events that go on in our mind that connect us. So for instance, what happens to me when I'm afraid of heights is I see the heights and then I go through my mind very quickly. I anticipate a number of events that conclude with me at the bottom of the canyon floor or on the sidewalk. Death. But it's not just a quick leap from the fear to that. It is the fear of slipping, the fear of falling, the fear of actual tumbling through the air. It is all of these connections, and then I connect them back to earlier experiences of accidents, of other times when I've fallen, and even of deaths that I've encountered. Today's gospel lesson is a strange one, I'll admit. It's as if Matthew was putting together his gospel and he had all of these sayings of Jesus, teachings of Jesus, and it was before an appendix was invented where they could have just put all this stuff. So he decided, well, let's just put it here in chapter 10. People will figure it out. And we've been spending 2,000 years scratching our head figuring it out. I'm not going to cover everything because there is a lot here where one sentence could be a whole sermon. But let's start with highlighting the beginning. Did you catch all of the fear not? All of the references to not being afraid? This is actually consistent with a lot of biblical literature, where the Bible again and again and again has hundreds and hundreds of times in which there is an admonition to be not afraid or fear not. It can be from angelic beings to other human beings to the voice of God in the Psalms to, in this case today, the voice of Jesus saying, fear not. It's comforting, and yet, I don't know about you, but I still experience fear. Fear arises in our very being from our understanding of, well, from an evolutionary point of view, it's actually a gift. To have fear has protected us. And that can be from whether we're at the edge of a building, maybe as a young child peering over so that there is fear so that we pull back, or the fear that we might be stalked by a saber-toothed tiger. This role of fear has kept us safe. So fear does play an important role in the life of a human being. One of the fears that I think is particularly of fascination in our world today is our experience of other people. Let's talk about this in a couple of different ways. Let's start with Jared Diamond, who's an anthropologist. He's written a number of books, but one in particular, a fairly recent one that I read called The World Until Yesterday. In it, he spends most of the book describing life from his research as an anthropologist in New Guinea, where he understands or seeks to understand cultures and their priorities. People afraid of those people just over the hill because they've never been there. And while the book is long and detailed in research, the most fascinating part of the book for me is the introduction, in which Mr. Diamond describes being at an international airport on his way back from New Guinea, having just spent time in those hills and mountains with indigenous people. And he realizes something that is peculiar about our modern society, that has never existed in the history of humanity. There he sat in an airport. You remember those? That was back in January when we did things like fly around the world or to just other cities in our own country. But at that time, in those days, people would sit in airports drinking a cup of coffee, watching as complete strangers walked by. Complete strangers sit next to them in the airport. People are engaging in the acquisition of goods, food, or maybe some water bottle. In other words, it's a very civil exchange of complete strangers. And not just complete strangers, but complete strangers, many of which look very different from you, whoever you are sitting in that airport. This is unheard of in the history of humanity. Because as Mr. Diamond discovered in his research in New Guinea, and is true throughout all other indigenous cultures, is, in fact, there was a very much of a closed attitude, and the reason you had a village, and the reason it took a village, is it was a mode of protection, because you were afraid of those other people across the hill. And here he sits in a modern airport in Hawaii on his way back, witnessing all kinds of strangers interacting. We have developed a level of trust with one another, where we could be in those public spaces with complete strangers and not experience fear. And then the coronavirus hit, and it has changed everything. Now we go to the grocery store, and I don't know about you, but I have a wonder about that person next to me in the vegetable section. Is he carrying the virus unwittingly? Or she who's over there looking at a lot of those melons and handling them, and I was going to purchase one. She's handling them with her bare hands. If I go over and choose one of those, will I be safe? In other words, all of a sudden in the public sphere, fear has entered our lives. Fear has always been a part of our lives, but somehow we put it at bay, at least in those public surroundings. But now another kind of fear has raised itself from underneath the surface to very overt. It's the fear of other people, the fear of people who look different, act different, but mostly appear different. Now, before we go there in detail, I'd like you to just imagine if I walk into a room as who I am, in a suit and a tie. What's your perception? If I walk into that same room in shorts, sandals, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap with sunglasses, what's your impression? If I walk into a room in a clerical collar with a cross, what's your impression? This is important because it goes at our instinct. Well, we just have biases. We have assumptions about people, even their dress. But then when we add other aspects of bias, we make assumptions. Clearly, in our world today, one of the things that we are wrestling with is on the issue of race. I want to tell two stories to maybe help many of the folks who are watching this to try to get their own minds around this idea. The first story comes from the speech that then presidential candidate Barack Obama gave in the spring of 2008 when he was talking about race. And in the middle of that speech, one of the rather vulnerable and confessional aspects of it that he made was he talked about his grandmother saying to him while he was a young boy. Now remember, his grandmother was white. Both his grandparents were white, and he was raised by them for some time in the Midwest, I think Kansas. And at that time, she says to him, she confesses her just instinctual fear of walking down the street, and when she sees another black person, she's afraid. She either says that she crosses the other side of the street or wants to cross the side of the street. I think Barack Obama was telling that story because he wanted to communicate that he understood the perspective of a white person in America. I think he also wanted to tell that story so that white people would understand what it's like to be a black person in this society. Which leads me to the second story, which appeared in a newspaper. I think it was the Washington Post. It was a section, an article on many of the dynamics that people are experiencing today. The example was of an African-American man who lives in a suburb outside of Washington, D.C. And he said to the writer of the column, well, I'm very intentional about my public presence. When I go for a walk in my neighborhood, I bring a little tiny toy dog, his own toy poodle or something, and a child, his child, preschool, kindergarten age. We go for a walk. Because when I walk in my neighborhood with that little tiny cute little dog and that young child, I'm safe, or I'm safer. Because if I were to walk alone as a black man in my neighborhood, I might be in jeopardy. So that little tiny dog and that young child protect me. I tell these two stories to try to get at race in America and fear. There are powers, principalities and powers, forces in our culture that intend to divide us, separate us, and make us think that we are not all God's children. In the second part of the gospel lesson today, towards the very end, you have that little bit more extensive quotation of Jesus about, I have not come to bring peace, but I've come to bring a sword, dividing family one from one another. A lot of people have used this passage, or in my view, misused it, to justify their own particular position on a variety of issues. In other words, they take the position and then they say, well, see, Jesus said, I've come to divide people, so therefore choose my side. I'm not exactly sure that that was the intent of those sayings. One of the risks of being a teacher who gets quoted is you're often misquoted. I wonder if we look a little bit deeper at a soul level of this particular passage and just note that a sword, the image of a sword, the metaphor of a sword is often used to cut or divide. When one makes an incision, you are cutting. When one makes a decision, you are cutting. In my experience, when people make a choice, make a decision, they say, look, I've looked at a lot of the issues, I've read about it, I've studied it, I've examined it, I've wrestled with it, I've prayed with it, I've reflected on it. This is a difficult decision to make, but here's my decision. And then they put it out there. What happens is that people take sides. They choose to agree or disagree. There is contention. Which is why any leader that has ever been in any position of authority, that has ever made any kind of decision, knows those two quotes of, well, you just can't win, or no good deed goes unpunished. Jesus and biblical literature as a whole make some pretty clear decisions. And one of those decisions that it makes and articulates throughout the Bible, from the beginning to the end, is that humanity is humanity. And racism and forms, either structural or interpersonal, that are designed to separate or devalue groups of people are not consistent with our understanding of the Christian faith, and they're not consistent with biblical literature. The Bible contains strong and clear teachings about the sin of racism and of the idolatry of heritage and nationality. For instance, in the book of Acts, in the midst of an evangelistic lecture to the citizens and philosophers in Athens, Paul makes the case that God created all the races from one human being. Paul's Greek listeners saw other races as barbarian. But against such views of racial superiority, Paul makes the case that all races have the same creator. Since all are made in the image of God, every human life is infinite and has equal value. It's talked about in Genesis. And later on, when Jonah puts the national interest of Israel ahead of the spiritual well-being of the racially other pagan city of Nineveh, Jonah is roundly condemned by God. One main effect of the gospel is to shatter the racial barriers that separate people. Paul writes about this again and again in Galatians and Ephesians. So it is an egregious sin to do anything to support those barriers. When Peter sought to do so, Paul reprimanded him in Galatians for losing his grasp on the gospel. And Jesus, by his interactions with people like Samaritans, women, and others who were considered other and less than in his culture, by his own actions, he communicates that humanity is all God's people. And we are not to separate, nor are we to value ourselves above one another, simply on the basis of our skin color, which is where we get the phrase white supremacy. It's the idea of being supreme. That is completely rejected in the Gospels. I think that most everybody that's listening today agrees with what I've just outlined. So the question is, what do we do about it? I am particularly helped in these cases by Brian Stevenson, who wrote the book Just Mercy. It was turned into a movie recently. In an article in 2017, I think it was, he outlined steps for us to take. So let's just walk through those quickly. Number one, we have to get close to the problems we care about. We have to get close to the problems we care about. That means we need to be in relationship. We need to be connected, and ideally, if we could, but we can't in this coronavirus time, we need to be in the same room breaking bread with people who are other than us. Now, I know our tendency, especially as middle-class Lutherans, we tend to be overly intellectual, and so we want to start a book club. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but that has to be a beginning. That can't be the ending. We are not going to book club. We are not going to read our way through the problem of racism in this country. So yes, read, study. But mostly, we got to get close to this problem. Now, for a lot of you, you're wondering, how can I do that? Can you find somebody who is different? Yeah. I'm asking you to be intentional about starting a relationship, if you don't already have one, with, if you are a white person, with an African American man or woman. If you are a white person, I'm asking you to be in conversation with one of our Latino brothers or sisters. If you're a white person who has really strong views on gender, being male or female, maybe there's an opportunity for you to start a conversation with somebody who defines themselves in a non-binary way. In other words, their identity is more fluid. I'm asking you, and I'm particularly talking to people in the New England Synod, because that's where I serve. Can we develop some starting points of people who are different than us, who look different than us, so that we can discover they're not different than us? Their life experience of the world is different. But at the core and heart of who we are as God's people, we are all God's people. Now, Mr. Stevenson goes on to cite several other points, but I want to emphasize this first one as a starting point. Developing a relationship with another human being. His other points are, number two, we have to change the narrative. The U.S. culture has a narrative of fear and anger. We have to move towards mutual respect. We have to change that fundamental storyline that we live and breathe, which is a storyline built on fear. Now, you and I are not immune to fear, as I've already said. And you and I, it is reinforced every time we turn on the television, listen to a podcast, and there is advertising, because advertising is based on fear. You are an inadequate person if you do not buy this brand new Mitsubishi. That is a message, or a fear is a tool in that process. We have to change that narrative and move it towards mutual respect. I'm suggesting that in this area of racial differences, we start with the first point. We get close to somebody who is not like us. Number three, he says we have to remain hopeful. Cynicism, be gone. We have to remain hopeful. It is who we are as God's people. We are people of hope. And nowadays, it is tough to be hopeful. I recognize that. But sit back. Find a way. Reconnect with the story that is the epic story of Genesis through Revelation, of Jesus' birth, death, talk about cynicism, and resurrection. We are a people of hope. And number 4, sometimes we have to do uncomfortable things. This one's hard. Perhaps the first suggestion that I've made today is going to make you uncomfortable. I get that. But I think we are called to do uncomfortable things, and we are called to be an uncomfortable people. Being uncomfortable is often an opportunity for growth. It's often an opportunity for living into the fullness of our calling to be disciples of Jesus. It's uncomfortable. I get it. And particularly conversations around race and racism make us uncomfortable. Be that as it may, let's embrace that uncomfortableness and let's do it together. Because I think if we do it together, we can acknowledge our uncomfortableness. You only go through that to get to the other side. And the gospel on the other side is always through the cross. It's always through the experience of loss, of death. We go through the cross as Jesus went through the cross on to Easter, to resurrection. Living the gospel is about trusting God and trusting one another. And trust always requires vulnerability. It is the only way forward. When we are vulnerable with one another and with God, there is the promise of God's presence. The mission of God becomes alive. When you think about it, that's really what God did with, for, and through Jesus. Entering the world as a child, a Palestinian, Arab, Jewish child, vulnerable, in complete need of other human beings to care for him, to raise him, to nurture him. That vulnerability that God entered into in the simple act of incarnating God's self in the form of a human being named Jesus. That's a vulnerable move. And God experienced the fullness of what it is to be a human being, including the vulnerable position of dying on the cross, betrayed, rejected by the very people whom God trusted. And yet, not letting that be the last word, God said, this is not the end. We move forward. I'm going to be vulnerable again and again and again. And as God is vulnerable with us, maybe we can seek to be vulnerable, uncomfortable with one another. And through that, we learn not to fear. Amen.
My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. No mercy of my own I claim, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. When darkness veils his lovely face, I rest on his unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds fail. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. His oath, his covenant, his blood sustain me in the raging flood. When all supports are washed away, he then is all my hope and to stay. O Christ, the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. When he shall come with trumpet sound, or may I then in him be found, clothed in his righteousness alone, redeemed to stand before the throne. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand.
Hi, we're the Rufflets, and we're here today to offer the prayers of the people in thanks for all our blessings and in hope that we gather together soon again.
For all churches, especially the community of St. Paul's, as we prepare to open our building, proclaiming God's love and the saving grace of Jesus Christ. Lord, in your mercy,
hear our prayer. Our prayers for social justice. God, we pray that your Spirit may rule over all things.
May your Spirit guide us on the way of peace, on the way of honest dialogue, on the way of reconciliation between peoples, on the way of disarmament and justice, on the way of freedom and life for all.
May your Spirit help us to speak up with courage, to share what we have and what we are, to challenge the powers that be, and to offer a message of liberation and life. Lord, in your mercy,
hear our prayer.
For the elderly and for those who can't take care of themselves during this pandemic, we offer blessings for their health, comfort, safety, and for those suffering from the coronavirus. Lord, please watch over them. Lord, in your mercy,
hear our prayer.
Oh, for nature, summer, and good weather, we pray for strong winds for our sailboats and sunny skies for our days. Lord, in your mercy,
hear our prayer.
Dear Lord, thank you for a successful end to the school year of 2020. Thank you for our graduates, and thank you for the innovative technologies that helped our children learn even through this time. Lord, in your mercy,
hear our prayer.
All right, Cora. What are you praying for? Loud, loud, loud. Towards Uncle John.
We love our fathers, we keep them safe, we want them to stay healthy and strong. We love our fathers.
Say, in your mercy.
In your mercy.
Hear our prayer.
Guys, pray for
God bless the grandfathers.
Lord, in your mercy.
Hear our prayer.
Hear our prayer.
My turn, my turn.
Okay. Do you want to pray for daddies?
You can play.
Say, God bless daddies. There we go.
For all these prayers and praises, Lord, we thank you. Amen.
Amen.
So we are about to share the pictures that all of you have sent in. I think we've got like 45 of them, just outstanding participation, so thank you for that. And this song that Amy and Dave are about to sing, it's beautiful, so thank you very much. I want to share, I got a little emotional editing this time, much like when we did the Mother's Day pictures several weeks ago. There's something to our families and our close relationships. They're complicated. They don't always go right. It's not always, there's all kinds of different ways that families are configured and put together and broken apart, and sometimes you hope reconcilable, but not always. And yet in the midst of that, we hope that love shines through. And I hope as you watch this piece, look at all our dads. I mean, you might get emotional too, so keep the Kleenex nearby. But also it's a reminder of our calling, that through our lives, whatever station in life we're in, whatever it is we're doing, we are those agents of grace in the world to let love shine through. So I hope wherever you are, love shine through today. thanks everybody who has participated today. We've got all kinds of stuff. Man, it seems to get better and better every week, doesn't it? Thank you also for your ongoing generosity. You can continue to send in your offerings to the church office or through the website, which I'll leave down here. It's important to continue with that. It's kind of a weird time in the world, and it's easy to start to pull the reins in and think about, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this, that, or the other thing? And yet it's our generosity that continues to shine through who we are. So thank you for that partnership in this ministry. Also want to share a little brief announcement, and then Tammy's going to share a little something as well. So we are getting our reopen plan together. We're hoping to get that in the mail this week. But as shared in the e-news this week, we're going to start doing some weekday services in person starting on July 1st. The way I think this is going to work is about 20-25 people. There'll be a sign up for that. And then we're going to keep the online stuff going. So again, just exercise personal responsibility. If you're not feeling well or you're feeling unclear about your own safety in this, just it's not a have to. That's why we continue doing online stuff, so we can all participate. But we're going to start to roll that out. The way that is going to work, though, is you need to sign up for the online community service, which Tammy's going to show you how to do right now if you have yet to do it.
So you may have received an email. I know I did, and I was wondering what to do. It will say St. Paul Evangelical Lutheran Church, reminder to join our online community. I haven't done it yet, so if you want to come and see my screen, and we can do this together. So we'll come in like this. We want to remind you to create an account. Click here. Hey. Just thinking about it. All right, so I need to create a password.
Password. Wait, that's not what you're doing, are you?
You'll never know. Hopefully it's the same. Okay. It says I'm not a robot. Well, I mean, I'm saying I'm not a robot. Then...
There's that one reporter that looks like a robot to me.
Oh, yeah. Oops. Okay, now I'll save that. And then check my email. All right. Email verification. Is that seriously as easy as it was? That's it. And then, then this screen comes up. It's already saved. Sign in. Let's see what it's going to look like. Oh, my birthday. Voila. That's it. Oh my gosh, it even has that Joe is my child, me is my child, and that Jeff is the primary adult contact.
So what happens if you didn't get this email?
If you didn't get this email, I bet Kim would love to hear from you. And then after you sign up, you're able to sign up for when we start doing outdoor worship. I mean, it's a win-win.
Thanks, Tam.
You bet, and all your information's in here. Oh, so if, let's just say my phone number was wrong, I can go ahead and edit it in here as well, Kim said. So there you go. So check all your stuff. And welcome to this century, I guess.
Hey, what a great morning we had together. Thank you, everybody.
That's right. Thank you so much.
So you heard Tammy talk at the very beginning about not just the Bold Transformational Faith Program, which she has gotten used to saying and knows those words inside and out. She also talked about our own very vacation Bible camp, which we're going to be doing through Luther Crest as well. So why don't you tell us just a little bit more about that quickly?
That's right. Well, actually, I didn't tell you anything about it. And
you told us that we were doing it.
Yes. So 1, we're doing it. 2, it's the first week of August. 3, it is through this exact same program. And so it's going to have a great camp feel to it. You can do it live or on your own time with your family. And maybe even at the end of August when we can safely gather, we'll be able to get together to sing some of the songs that we learned. And I think it's going to be fantastic. The theme is Go Make Disciples.
Which seems like a great transition into being sent out to the rest of our day, does it not?
That's right.
To go and make disciples?
But before we do that,
we should share the peace.
No, even before that.
We should
check out my shirt. Isn't this awesome?
Oh, yeah. I love that shirt. I think that's my favorite pun camp shirt.
Right on the back. Can you read what it says? Am I tiptoes?
I think we can.
Okay. And Jeff, you have a different shirt on too.
I do. That's because I got cold in the hot sun.
That's right. It's only like 83.
Only. Hey, so happy Father's Day. Have a great day. Go make disciples. Let's keep doing stuff apart and yet together. And at the same time, the peace of the Lord be with you always.
And also with you.
Go share the peace with one another and with everyone that you meet along the way. Have a great Sunday, everybody.
And happy Father's Day.
Thanks. Part of the thing is I'm not the right size for this shirt.
Was that Mia's?
No, it's mine, but it's only a 1XL, not an extra large.
That's all right.
I'm not as small as I once was.
It's all those camp bagels.
I love those camp bagels. Those Bonnie McMuffins, those are really good.
Should we start?
Let's do it. Okay.
Oh, we are on. It's water.
It is actually. Luther Crest. Polo
beautiful.
Shirt, so I'm
Yeah,
glad to go.
awesome. Yes, and I am too. A little corporate sponsor, right?
That's right, always. Because of what God has done for us. Right?
That was a natural pause for editing purposes. Make sure we don't say that online.
Well, Tammy was right. Wishful thinking. It's always next year.